Imagine waking up one morning to find out that someone deliberately ran a $50 million ship aground on purpose and then simply walked away. No explosion, no fire, no dramatic sinking, just a colossal vessel, hundreds of meters long, sitting motionless on a sandbank, engines off, crew gone, lights dark. A ship that the entire world could track on radar, yet nobody could explain. They called it the ghost ship. And the story behind it is one of the most calculated, bizarre, and legally fascinating events in modern maritime history. Today we are going to break down exactly what happened, why it happened, and how a single deliberate grounding set off a chain reaction worth tens of millions of dollars and changed maritime law forever. The ship, the owner, and the setup build the world. Keep it simple and relatable. To understand this story, you first need to understand how the shipping industry actually works, because it is nothing like you imagine. In global shipping, a single vessel can have 3 different entities attached to it at the same time. The owner, who physically owns the ship and the steel. The charterer, a company that rents that ship for a fixed period to carry cargo. And the operator, who runs the day-to-day logistics. Think of it like this. You own an apartment, you rent it to a tenant. That tenant then sublets it to someone else. Now multiply that by 100,000 tons of steel and $50 million. And suddenly, legal responsibility becomes an absolute nightmare. This is exactly the trap that was set. Our ship in question was a bulk carrier, a massive cargo vessel built to haul raw materials like coal, grain, or iron ore across oceans. These ships are the workhorses of global trade, invisible, unglamorous, but critically important. The charterer, the company renting the ship, had entered into a long-term contract with the owner, fixed daily rates, hundreds of thousands of dollars per month. But then the market shifted, freight rates collapsed, and suddenly the charterer was paying far more for the ship than they could ever earn using it. They were bleeding money, and they needed a way out. The plan: introduce the legal loophole. This is the turning point. Now, if you are a company and you want out of a shipping contract, your options are limited. You can try to negotiate, you can pay a termination fee, or, if you are feeling particularly bold, you can look for a legal loophole. And that is exactly what they found. Maritime contracts have something called a redelivery clause. When a charterer is done with a ship, they must return it, redeliver it, to the owner in a specific condition, at a specific location, at a specific time. The timing and condition of that redelivery are everything. If the ship is returned late, the charterer pays extra. If it is returned damaged, there are penalties. But what happens if the ship is returned in a state so complicated, so legally ambiguous, that the entire contract becomes disputed? Here is what the charterer allegedly did. They ordered the ship's captain to ground the vessel, deliberately run it aground in shallow coastal waters. At the exact moment redelivery was supposed to take place, the ship was no longer at sea. It was no longer operable, and the question of who was responsible for it became instantly murky. Was the ship in the charterer's possession when it grounded, or had it technically been returned to the owner the moment the engines stopped? Who was responsible for the salvage costs? Who had to pay to refloat a vessel the size of a city block? These were not simple questions. They were the entire point. The legal ambiguity was the weapon. The logistics of a grounding get technical. Viewers love real detail. This is the unique value of your video. Let us pause for a second, because the actual act of deliberately grounding a ship is far more complex than it sounds. You cannot just steer a giant vessel into the sand and hop off. There is a crew aboard. There are maritime safety laws. There are coastal authorities watching radar screens in real time. Every movement of a commercial vessel over a certain size is logged, tracked, and time-stamped by the Automatic Identification System, the AIS, which is essentially the GPS tracker of the shipping world. So, how do you do this without going to prison? Carefully. Very carefully. According to reports from the subsequent legal case, the ship was maneuvered into shallow waters near a coastline, brought to a near stop, and allowed to settle on the seabed as the tide dropped. The crew was then evacuated. The vessel was left dark and empty. On radar screens across the region, the ship simply stopped moving. No distress signal, no mayday call, just silence. And somewhere in a boardroom, someone had calculated that this was still cheaper than honoring the contract. But here is what most people never talk about. The ghost ship did not just create a legal battle between two companies. It sent a shockwave through an industry that moves 90% of everything you own. Think about what was sitting inside that vessel when it was grounded. Raw materials, commodities, products bound for factories, ports, and warehouses across multiple countries. The moment that ship stopped moving, an entire supply chain froze with it. Buyers were waiting on cargo. Sellers were missing deadlines. Manufacturers were halting production lines. And every single one of them was asking the same question. Who is responsible for our losses? Because in shipping, cargo owners are a third party entirely. They have their own insurance, their own contracts, their own lawyers. And when a vessel goes aground, whether by accident or by design, those cargo claims stack up fast. We are talking about demurrage fees, cargo damage assessments, freight insurance disputes, and port congestion costs, all running simultaneously, all being billed to someone. The legal fallout delivered the verdict. This is the payoff. What followed was one of the most fiercely contested maritime arbitration cases in recent memory. The ship owner argued that the charterer had deliberately sabotaged the vessel, that the grounding was intentional, a calculated act to escape financial obligations, and that every dollar of the salvage and the downtime should be borne by the charterer. The charterer's legal team fired back. They argued that the grounding had been an operational decision, that the vessel had been redelivered, and that any subsequent costs were the owner's problem. Arbitration panels, high court referrals, expert maritime witnesses. The case dragged on for years. The verdict, the charterer was found liable. The deliberate nature of the grounding, proven through communications, navigation data, and crew testimonies, made it impossible to argue innocence. The court ruled that deliberately grounding a ship to escape a contract constitutes a fundamental breach, one of the most serious violations in commercial maritime law. Beyond the money, the case sent a warning through the entire industry. New clauses began appearing in charter contracts. Ship owners started demanding specific language around redelivery obligations and off-hire events. Insurance companies rewrote policies. The ghost ship became a case study in every maritime law school worth its name. Deliver the emotional gut punch. Then invite engagement. Here is the thing about this story that keeps me up at night. This was not a freak accident. It was not a storm. It was not a navigation error. It was a calculated business decision made by real people in real boardrooms who looked at a $50 million ship and decided it was more useful as a legal weapon than as a vessel. The ocean does not care about contracts, but courts do. And the ghost ship found that out the hard way. Drop a comment below. Do you think the charterer's plan was genius or just catastrophically reckless? I genuinely want to know what you think.